to know it more. Let's go to the next slide. The negative form. Chris. So this word we don't pronounce it Chris. So in some words ch is pronounced k. So this word is Chris. Chris. Chris doesn't speak English. Chris doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak Arabic. Mary doesn't speak French. She doesn't speak German. Antonio doesn't speak Italian. He doesn't speak Chinese. Fuzia doesn't speak one language. She speaks two languages. She doesn't speak two languages. She speaks three languages. So you see, doesn't speak. So we don't have S with the verb when we have the word doesn't. Let's practice them. Let's go to the question form. Does Chris speak English? Does he speak Arabic? Does Mary speak French? Does she speak German? Does Antonio speak Italian? Does he speak Chinese? Does Fuzia speak one language? Does she speak two languages? So the same, when in the negative form or in the question form, the verb doesn't take S with he, she, it. Remember this rule. Let's see more examples. Positive form. Adam speaks to himself. He speaks to people. She speaks to you. Olga speaks to her teacher. Claire speaks about money. Tim speaks to his manager. Let's repeat after me. Adam speaks to himself. He speaks to people. She speaks to you. Olga speaks to her teacher. Claire speaks about money. Tim speaks to his manager. So we see the verb is with S because it's positive form. Let's see the negative form and let's see if we have S or not. Of course we don't have S because we are in the negative form. So Adam doesn't speak to himself. He doesn't speak to people. She doesn't speak to you. Olga doesn't speak to her teacher. Claire doesn't speak about money. Tim doesn't speak to his manager. Let's repeat after me. Adam doesn't speak to himself. He doesn't speak to people. She doesn't speak to you. Olga doesn't speak to her teacher. Claire doesn't speak about money. Tim doesn't speak to his manager. Let's go to the question form and let's see if we are going to see S with the verb or not. Of course not. We are not going to see the S with the verb because it's the question form. So in the negative form and question form, don't put S to the verb with he, she, it. So does Adam speak to himself? Does he speak to people? Does she speak to you? Does Olga speak to her teacher? Does Claire speak about money? Does Tim speak to his manager? Let's repeat after me. Does Adam speak to himself? Does he speak to people? Does she speak to you? Does Olga speak to her teacher? Does Claire speak about money? Does Tim speak to his manager? Let's go to see more examples. Positive form. He speaks a strange language. Sophia speaks to her husband. So there is an R missing, her, not he, her. So write R, the R is missing. So Sophia speaks to her husband. Nancy speaks English very well. She speaks German really well. Jim speaks 7 languages. Richard speaks Japanese quite well. Let's repeat after me. He speaks a strange language. Sophia speaks to her husband. Nancy speaks English very well. She speaks German really well. Jim speaks 7 languages. Richard speaks Japanese quite well. Let's go to the negative form. He doesn't speak a strange language. Sophia doesn't speak to her husband, so there is an R missing. Her husband. Nancy doesn't speak English very well. She doesn't speak German really well. Jim doesn't speak 7 languages. Richard doesn't speak Japanese quite well. Let's go to the question form. Does he speak a strange language? Does Sophia speak to her husband? There is an R missing, it's a printing mistake. Does Nancy speak English very well? Does she speak German really well? Does Jim speak 7 languages? Does Richard speak Japanese quite well? Let's see more examples. Daisy speaks to her dog. Saul speaks our language. Fran speaks very fast. Bob speaks Indian. Indian is the language of India. Helen speaks about her project. Stevens speaks better than them. George speaks Korean. Noor speaks about Christmas. So the word Christmas, T is silent. So we have CH, but we don't pronounce it ch, we pronounce it k, Christmas. So let's repeat after me. Daisy speaks to her dog. Saul speaks our language. Fran speaks very fast. Bob speaks Indian. Helen speaks about her project. Stevens speaks better than them. George speaks Korean. Noor speaks about Christmas. So let's see these examples in the negative form. Daisy doesn't speak to her dog. Saul doesn't speak our language. Fran doesn't speak very fast. Bob doesn't speak Indian. So Indian with capital letter because it's a language, it's a printing mistake. Helen doesn't speak about her project. Stevens doesn't speak better than them. George doesn't speak Korean. Noor doesn't speak about Christmas. Let's see the question form. Does Daisy speak to her dog? Does Saul speak our language? Does Fran speak very fast? Does Bob speak Indian? So now it's correct with capital letter. Does Helen speak about her project? Does Steven speak better than them? Does George speak Korean? Does Noor speak about Christmas? In conclusion, from all the examples we've studied so far, we notice that the verb speak in present simple changes only in the positive with he, she, it. He speaks, she speaks, it speaks. It doesn't change in the negative and question. He doesn't speak and does he speak. In the next lesson, we'll practice closed questions with does and short answers with the words he and she.